I rebuilt my site in WebAssembly, and let me show you how it works. So here is the website. So it's standard HTML, as you'd probably expect. And so I've been getting into agentic coding, right? So you could use something like JavaScript. I used to do Elixir. I found that very pleasant because it's functional, gives you a lot of safety. What I have found with agentic coding is like you can just use any programming language that you want. And so Zig or C is actually as good as using TypeScript or Elixir or Python. In some ways, there's no reason to have a scripting language anymore because it's the LLM's problem to try and work out the abstractions to make it more convenient. The advantage of something like Zig or C is that it's low level enough that it can be plenty fast for the sort of things that we want to solve. So the thing I want to solve is how to make a website. So let me walk through how this works. So the tool is called Quip, and you can see that it's just a Go binary. So you can just install it just with Go install. And then here are some examples of the WebAssembly parts running in the browser. So if I add more words here, you can see the updates. And I've also got a little counter here to show you like how many bytes of wasm it took and how long it took to render. As you can see, it's just, this is in Chrome. Chrome's very solid. It's basically under a millisecond. And so Quip is a command line tool. And so if you were to try and run that same thing on the command line, this is what you do. You echo out the sentence. You can see there's exactly 8 words. And then we run the WC wasm file, which, as I said, is only 600 and something bytes, and it outputs the exact same thing. So that's the philosophy of what I'm trying to achieve here with Quip. Quip is a thing to run WebAssembly modules. You provide them. You provide them by vibe coding or agentic engineering or whatever you want to call it. So you can put as much or as little effort into making these modules as you like. So you can see here I've got the prompt, write a WC Zig module like user bin WC. So it's a very short prompt, right? Like, so it's relying on and having some prior knowledge. Like WC has been around for decades, so it knows what the hell that is. Zig is going to be familiar because I'm running this in the context of my project. I'm using Codex. I find it's very good at sort of pulling the context and viewing files from the project without me having to sort of spoon feed it. So I find something like this works fantastically. Technically, the prompt was something like this, and then it's the normal WC command. If you run it, it does output the file name. So if we just run this here, it usually has the file name if I were to do that, but actually forget about this. So that's essentially it. So that's some basic text, right? We can go further. My aim is to try and make an entire website out of this thing. It needs to be more than just text. One of the things that I find really pesky are these little icons in the up here. And so what I often find, if you've ever done what I do, you create some icon and you go to Google and you say, Google, tell me a PNG to ICO converter. And you go to one of these crazy websites that have 1,000 ads on them. They're probably mining Bitcoin. Actually, to be honest, this one looks like it could be good. But, these things, they just have these sort of weird, weird URLs, and they're just full of, it's struggling to scroll. It wants me to log into Google. It's got all these crappy, it's just this sort of honeypot for people that just want to convert a file. Like, this shouldn't require, this shouldn't be hard. Like, in one way, like, these formats have been around again for decades, so like my computer just should be able to work with this format. It shouldn't have to I shouldn't need to go to some special website to do this. And so that's what I essentially made here. I built the philosophy of Quip. If we scroll down here, the philosophy is that it's we're using formats that are really, really familiar. formats that have stood the test of time. So if we've got an uncompressed image, what do? We use image BMP. I remember these from Windows, right? Like these things are ancient. And so ancient means usually simple. Ancient usually means efficient because they have to run on a 80s or 90s computer. Ancient also means like the LLM's going to know this thing back to front. So if I'm going to tell it in a prompt, generate me a thing that's going to say resize a BMP, it's going to know how to do that. I'm not going to have to hold its hand. It's not going to be some newfangled format that it's going to have to do extra research on or get stuck and need my guidance. Similarly, SVG is not as old, but that thing's been around for I think a couple of decades now. So that thing is just a standard that we just should use, and it's text-based, which is perfect. So it's not Adobe Illustrator or Figma. It's this open format. If we've got an archive of files, what I'm using is the tar format. So tar is sort of like a zip file. It's uncompressed, but it's essentially just a bunch of files with little headers for each file of sort of Unixy metadata, and then just shoved together. Quip modules expect one input and one output. So for a directory of files, I need one input, and a tar archive is the perfect example of that. Another one that I found on the project was this thing called Web Archive. There's like a dozen of these different formats. Mozilla came out with one, I think. Internet Explorer had another one. This one seemed to be fairly simple again. I think it's like from the 90s. Again, agents like Codex just knew this thing back to front. And so what I've decided, we've sort of got tar for a directory of files. We've got this WARC, this web archive for a snapshot, like an archive of an entire website. So tar and WARC you'll see used all the time in Quip. If we need structured data, I want to explore this more in the future, but SQLite 3, there's now all these sort of forks and re-implementations of it in Rust and whatever language now, right? So the format itself, the database file itself, is this universal format, and it's very flexible. It stood the test of time. And finally, it goes without mentioning, like UTF-8. The browser was built, grew up in the 90s. Some things from the 90s just, shouldn't still be around. And, UTF-8 is the sort of best of the old school world and the best of the new school from the sort of early 2000s. Like UTF-16 is just, that's what JavaScript often has to be constrained by because it's backwards compatible. But like, I just want to I don't want UTF-16 or anything like that anymore. UTF-8 is both efficient and just a beautiful encoding. So we've got these formats. We've got these modules. The modules are going to consume one of these style of formats, these sort of open universal formats. They're going to do some sort of massaging of the data. It might say take a tar and output a tar, might take an SVG, output an SVG, or might do something, go to a different format. It might take an SVG and then turn it into a BMP. So that's like rasterization. So we've worked out our formats. That's been a lot of the sort of thinking behind this project. Which format should be there. Maybe I should add, the sort of greatest of all time formats to the Quip website. We've got our encodings, so that's actually sort of slightly different. The formats are sort of like file formats. Encodings are one level down. So we've got UTF-8. Another thing that I was exploring, sort of put on pause for now, but I was looking at image filters. So if you've ever looked at like a WebGL shader or the modern Web GPU, which is, this is why I put on pause because it's, I could spend months just trying to understand this. But those things use floating point numbers for, RGBA, for the color values. And the reason why it does that is one, because the whole ecosystem's grown around this, so processing floating point is like extremely fast because the hardware is built to serve it, and it's also just like future proof. So if you decide to actually at the end convert it to 8-bit, RGB or 16-bit or some other format, like the floating point gives you that sort of quality that you want to have. So I want to, again, I'm choosing like these encodings that are universal. They're going to still work in 50 years, and they're going to have sort of quality embedded in them. So I'm sort of choosing just UTF-8, not UTF-16. That's gone. Just floating point RGB values. So I just want to shout out the WA0 library. This is the actual thing that I'm running the WebAssembly modules in this, using its secure sandbox. This library is incredible, and so it's like a WebAssembly runtime that's written in just Go. There's wasm time as well, which is fantastic, but for this tool, I just wanted Go, and this made sense. And I didn't want to use any of the CGO stuff, which I would have probably have done. This another little note here. I do not use WASI. I think WASI is worth exploring, but the biggest things that I have against it hasn't shipped yet. It's version 0.2, I think now, maybe 0.3. Like it's still essentially in alpha. I think it was 0.1 was it one of the earlier versions, and then the next version, like they're completely different. So I was working on a library called Orb for WebAssembly. It's still there. I've sort of just need to sort of digest thoughts with agentic coding to really understand where to take that to the where to take that in the future. But I was considered implementing WASI, and it just changed. So it's like, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't spend a month implementing all of that. And two, like the surface area is huge, and it's sort of trying to get this like POSIX, like reboot of POSIX. They keep rebooting Spider-Man movies, like it's trying to reboot that, and then all this complexity comes along with it. It's great that we've got these standards, but then like it's just, the problem is the scope is so large because they've bit off so much, and that's why it's taking so damn long to standardize it. So it's an unshaky foundation. I'm just, I want to have something that's solid. And the other thing is that it's not clear to me. Feel free to comment if you know a bit more context here, but it's not clear to me how WASI is going to be added to browsers, because it's essentially, we've got these sort of two things fighting in the WebAssembly world. We've got one Godzilla is the web browser, which is sort of shipped first. That's the OG. Web browser obviously is serving websites, HTTP first. WASI is the sort of server. It's the other Godzilla now that seems to be winning the war. WASI comes from like a file system, Unixy operating system, command line world. And so it's two very different philosophies. And so I need something that's going to run in the browser. You saw that little demo, like it runs in the browser. Like I need something that's going to that works today in the browser. So I can't afford to tie myself to something that is just so uncertain and so bloated. Like browsers need stuff that is really light. So let's go through a couple more examples here. So we've got the word count thing. That was pretty simple. We've got one here that's a SVG, and so you can see here if I change the radius here, right? So if I change this to 20, 12, let's make it 2, you can see that this is live updating. And so I've imported this off the Lucid library. So if we look at Lucid icons, this is huge. This is the sort of community. There seems to be one of these every few years, so I sort of lose track of which one's the best, but this one seems to have a good reputation. It's all open. It's this sort of community-led icon set, from what I understand. And so it makes sense to me, like you'd want to use these, but then what I often find with icons is you sort of want to change them. So you can go into the sort of UI thing here. Okay, I'm going to choose like an up arrow or something like that. And then you can choose... you can copy SVG, you can use React, you can sort of do different stuff, but like often I want to like change the color or just tweak it slightly. So there's a sort of common issue that happens with these icons is like, great, you got the sort of source icon, but then I want to tweak it. And so that's what this little demo is. So I've just pasted, just hard-coded, one of the icons, which is the smile icon. So if we look at that, here you can see it in sort of vectory goodness. And then I've got a pipeline here that's going to take that SVG, rasterize it. So we mentioned that just before. It's going to turn it into pixels. And actually, before that step, it's going to take any reference to current color. So Lucid has this sort of approach where to make it easier to style, it uses this special color property called current color. And I want to be able to change that color. So I want to be able to go down here and go, okay, now it's pink. Okay, now it's this this green color. Now it's blue. And so that's one common thing that I found with icons. And so that's what this is doing. And so you can see here that this took 32 kilobytes of WebAssembly to do all of this. So it's doing it's taking this source file. You could see I could edit it before. I could change this to 8 and change what's happening here. It's changing this current color. It's then rasterizing it, so it's turning into pixels. And then finally, it's actually turning into the ICO format. So we talked about these icons being a pain to sort of convert. We had to find these sort of weird websites. Ta-da, here we go. It literally prompted, can you convert a BMP? That's that open format that I was saying. That's just a sort of universal basic format for images. Turn a BMP into a ICO format, ICO format, which is what the favicon.ico is. And so that's how I made this little icon here. And so the way I did that was I basically I think I just hand coded, or I might have used an agent to sort of prompt this little SVG here. And then on the command line, you can use quip. So you can, anything here, you can see you can also do it on the command line. So essentially this color is just a number value. So that's how it's being passed in. So these are the steps. Get the SVG, recolor it. So it's, I think this is the orange. We're going to rasterize it into a BMP, and then we're going to turn that BMP into an ICO file, and then we just like spit it out. And so if you're wondering how this works on in the browser here, we can look. And so just boost the font size a bit and just collapse this guy down. So we've got a custom element here. So again, this is coded with AI, so there might be a few little optimizations to go, but it essentially just goes, you can instantiate and load a WebAssembly module in the browser. This is a custom element. Look at your source tags. Each source tag is one of these steps here, one of these modules that we're going to sort of transform from one format to another. So run these steps. You can see that this one takes like a parameter or a prop almost, calling it uniform after what shaders have. It takes this value for the color, and then then you just specify inputs, text areas, and so forth for you, the user, to be able to input those. So that's, that text area is what I'm typing here. This input type color is what this color here is. So I'm changing that there, and so it's then running that again, turning that into an image with the blob, built-in blob API that's built into browsers, and like sticking that ICO there on the page. And again, you can see it's like really damn fast. So one thing to note here is that my rasterizer, like I'm just starting out simple and just trying to get this stuff to work. I know in the future I can improve things. So one of the corners that the rasterizer cut, it's sort of got this nice 90s aesthetic. There's no anti-aliasing. So we're starting off basic, but there's, possibly you can try today. Take my SVG rasterizer, tell it, hey, add anti-aliasing, see what it does. One of the reasons why I haven't done that yet is I want to explore different types of anti-aliasing, so I want to sort of work out which ones looks the best and doesn't use too much memory. And then finally, the whole website's written in Markdown, of course. So if we look at this file here, it's all Markdown. So all these examples and everything are just Markdown. And so I had this problem. I want to render Markdown to HTML. How do I do this? Well, of course, I'm going to prompt my AI to implement a Markdown parser in WebAssembly. And I'm going to, there's different languages you can use to actually implement that. Zig, C, Orb if you wanted to. You can even do raw WebAssembly. I'm finding Zig works really, really well. And so this was a problem that I had. And so what I ended up, what I had sort of for a few weeks here was this Markdown basic where I just said, hey, AI, generate me this Markdown. It's just going to take Markdown. It's going to turn in HTML. That's all I want you to do. I don't need an AST. You don't need to sort of have plugins. I don't need to do anything. Just try and make the most efficient Markdown converter you can. And so you can see here, you know, I've peeked through some of this these lines. You can see here, this is why Zig's awesome. You get inline unit tests, which is really handy. You know, the LLM can help generate these, can sort of help sort of double check its work to see that it's generated the right thing. So these, you know, one of the things I really like about this is that these files are just self-contained. I'm trying to just, you know, a single file is amazing what it's able to do. And so, you know, it was pretty good, but it was obviously missing features. And so, you know, I had use a little esoteric feature of Markdown, and it wouldn't work. So I have done a few things. So one thing I wanted to do is there's a spec here. There's a CommonMark spec. If you go to the CommonMark repo, there's a CommonMark spec. So if we just look this up here, CommonMark spec, txt, GitHub. There's a repo for the CommonMark spec. It's the official spec. You know, they did all this work to try and standardize this. And that's why it's called CommonMark. It's not technically Markdown. And then there's a spec file, and then you can see it, you know, it's that same file I was just looking at. And then if you see one of these here, test, I think, spec test, there's a Python file that essentially takes this spec file somewhere here, spec file, and the spec file is carefully constructed to have inputs, outputs. And so quip modules are just input, outputs. So it makes sense for, you know, these sort of things are aligning here. And so what I did was I got this spec file, I got this little Python file, and I just told, hey, make a WebAssembly version of this. And so that's what I have. So I've got the CommonMark spec, so I'm calling these compliance modules. I want to have a sort of a name that is distinct, because spec is sort of doesn't mean anything now anymore. So quip comply is a command for running the compliance modules against an implementation. And it's going to tell you if the implementation passes or fails. It's binary. And so if we look at this spec here in Zig, it's based on that file, and my agent helped me create this. And you can see that Zig has this awesome ability to embed a file. So it's doing the exact same thing that Python script was, taking that text file, chopping it up, turning it into input outputs. Here's an expected Markdown input. Here's an expected HTML output. So it's doing all that, which is fantastic. So it's able to tell the LLM, hey, create a spec for CommonMark. If you give it a module, it's not going to work. So it needs to implement it then. And so there's possibly some edge cases here, but I essentially just told my LLM about quip comply. So if you see how this works, if you I might just try and pull one from history. Here we go. So here's the here you can see it running, and you can see it's damn fast. That's the beauty of WebAssembly. And so if we echo some Markdown, and then quip run modules text Markdown. So I'm big on MIME types. Again, a standard that's been around for decades. You can see, you know, any module could do this, but I assure you this is a proper CommonMark. You know, it's compliant with the CommonMark spec. And so that this was AI generated on the side, on the right-hand side here, this compliance module, the spec that's going to test inputs, outputs. Here's the implementation that the AI agent implemented in Zig. It just iterated. I sort of held its hand a bit. I didn't do a Rafflegram loop. I was involved in the loop. I just kept hitting continue. I just wanted to see where it failed, and eventually spat out this CommonMark parser. and you can see that it runs really, really quick. It's sort of hard to believe that that thing works here. But if I give this a completely different module, that's going to not run at all. So let's go modules. Where we have this UTF-8 and this word count thing, like that thing's going to fail, right? So we get, this sort of output is fairly, kind of low level. It's very verbose though. The verboseness is on purpose because I want to give the agent as much information as it requires. So you can see here we've got the as UTF-8, we convert that to hex just to really, there's no ambiguity here. There's the expected output, blah, blah, blah. What it actually produced, that's the result of the word count program. So it obviously failed. So yeah, I was able to loop with the AI, and you can see that the spec was so quick to run. I was able to just keep knocking it, just keep going. It's sort of like the boxing, like those little boxing balls. It's just because this is so quick, it can just get the reps in. So that's how I created this CommonMark parser. And so you can see it here in the browser. So if I add some exclamation marks here, you can see it's rendering here. And you can see it's damn fast. And the other thing you can see is it's pretty small. It's 47 kilobytes. So I've looked at some other wasm implementations. I really want to double check here to make sure that my version is, hasn't just cut a corner somewhere. One sort of fun fact was that the first initial version when I got it to create this was it just the compliance, the spec is input output. It just got that same spec and just spat out, just said for this input expect that output. So that was pretty, it cut a corner there. So that was pretty it was sort of a bit tricky. But I'm pretty sure that this thing's pretty you can see it's dynamic content, so it's doing something. It's working. And so we can do stuff like this, right? We should be able to get all the, if I remember my Markdown syntax. I think that's right. Might be wrong. Anyway, it's definitely needs some checks, but that is enough for my website to work. Ta-da! It converts Markdown into HTML. It works. And you can see it works on the command line as well. So you can see this common philosophy here. I want stuff to work on the command line. That's because of me as a developer. It's just so damn simple. It's also because with AI agents, they can run these command line apps. Like I don't imagine there's going to be a version of Quip that's an MCP. Maybe at some point I'll add it, especially if WebMCP looks like the most interesting version of that idea so far. But just like command line apps are just like so simple. I can run them, an AI agent can run them. If there's if you get stuck, what do? You go Quip help. So this is what the agent can use to learn how to implement a comply module, right? Like I've just got some documentation here. I tell it exactly what the contract is for the WebAssembly module that it needs to implement. I give it some examples. If you're a human that's really interested in this, you can just read this document. If you're an AI agent, you can just go to the exact same document and learn how to do things. And so that's a core philosophy that I believe in. We shouldn't be trying to create stuff for agents that is distinct for humans. We need to keep the human in the loop. We don't want to create this sort of special source thing for AI agents. I don't want this help thing to be like 10,000 lines that no human could physically actually read it. There's sort of a healthy balance there. There's sort of those two things that it has to be consumable by humans, has to be consumable by LLMs. I think you can get the sort of nice, neat middle ground. And we'll say that an LLM helped write this, and so that's one thing I'm trying and balance here. Is I haven't reviewed every single word here, but these things you might have found yourself. They give you so much confidence that you sort of go, well, I think that's good enough. But that's one thing I really want to find out with this tool is like, I really want to review every line of code that it's generated. I want it to be really accurate. And so you can go on further. There's the little story of how I implemented the using the CommonMark spec. But wait, there's more. We've got a router. So, it's great I can run these things on the command line, input, output. A website's got a bit more going on. Website has pages. So, we've got these docs. I want to be able to render these docs. I've got this page that probably needs to be rewritten. Called how it works. I've got a link to the GitHub, and one other cool thing that I'll come back to is this view source thing. But yeah, I want a real website, and I'm tired of these frameworks. I'm tired of these JavaScript frameworks that want to fork the language, that want to add, use static and all whatever, use server and whatever. Sort of haven't kept up with all that because it's just, it's not vanilla JavaScript. I know we all use TypeScript now, but like you can't just keep adding stuff to the language and call it JavaScript. If React, the whole point of it to me, apart from this, the component system, which was so beautiful, the whole point of it to me was that you weren't using some sort of weird templating language. It was just JavaScript. But if you're taking the language and essentially doing a soft fork of it, and then you have to use all your bundlers and all these tools. I know Vite's amazing, but these tools are so big. JavaScript has become really complicated. You have to use all these heavyweight tools just to get something done. I don't want an SUV. I don't want a bus. I don't want a truck to be able to just make a website. I want a bicycle. Steve Jobs said bicycle for the mind. He didn't say a bus for the mind. He didn't say a truck for the mind. I want really basic tools. And so I want to have something that can make a website. So this is, I've sort of boiled it down. But yeah, you've got a directory, got a couple of files, an about page, a home page, a fav icon, really boiled down. It's also got another directory with some docs, first, second, third, just some example. They're just markdown files. And then you've got this thing called recipes. So these are wasm modules. So again, we have this input, output. You can see here, there's this markdown. And then I'm going, okay, well, I want to be able to syntax highlight bash. Probably need to shorten this name. It's sort of a bit repetitive here, but in previous websites I've used highlight.js. It's awesome, but as you can kind of tell, I love JavaScript, but the ecosystem's so big. I really want tools that are, I think there's this exciting opportunity here to just say hey, I can just try and re-implement this thing. This thing's highlight.js has been around for 10 years or more. Just try and re-implement it. I don't need 50 languages. I just need a couple of languages that I've got on my website. Just try and re-implement it. So that's how this stuff worked, right? So this syntax highlighting of this bash code element with, it's using HL.js. It's sort of pretending to be highlight.js so I can reuse the style sheet. The wonderful night owl. It's it's highlighting this file. Don't know if it's done the perfect job, but it can be improved. So we're going to take Markdown, turn it into HTML. Then we're going to highlight bash where it's got a code language bash. Then we're going to add the style sheet for night owl. Then I want analytics on my site. I use Fathom Analytics because I believe it's the privacy story is good. I don't want them cookie banners as well. We add that in. It's just a few lines. We then wrap that up and add all this extra stuff. We want a head. We want stuff in here. We want the viewport so it works on mobile. We want this title thing. We want a style sheet. So this all comes in. I'm just inlining a style sheet. That's nice and quick. And one other thing, CSS is freaking awesome now. We don't have to use Sass or any of these damn tools. I know that's ancient now, but I don't even use Tailwind. You can nest selectors here. Probably ideally I'd compress this thing, take out the, whatever it's called, minimize the, I forgot what the word is, minify it. But yeah, you can see that, look, main, and then the H1 and the H2, we can nest these things. CSS is freaking awesome now. So I just slap that style sheet in, it just renders the page. We also do a little trick where we find the H1 that's on the page and we turn it into the title tag. I don't want to have to duplicate that stuff. The H1 comes to the markdown, then we extract it out, turn the title. And then I want to add like a footer and a header. So that's what these, this little nav here is, just some hard-coded HTML, very, very simple, just with some nav tags. And you can see with Zig that we can like import these files in. So these little things get imported into this page wrap here. So the Zig has this embed file feature. You can just basically find a sibling file that's sitting next to it, pull it in. And so essentially this pipeline takes Markdown, turns it into HTML, serves this page, and you can see it's damn quick. So then I'm happy to go into this in a future video. I'm trying to minimize the sort of scope of Quip because I want it to be extensible. I want some opinions in there, but I want it to be flexible. So I essentially take a snapshot of the entire website. So I've got the content, I've got the recipes that transform the content, and they've got yet another WASM file. Everything's a WASM file on this website, as you can see. I turn that archive into a static tar. I don't want trailing slashes, so got to encode that opinion. I just told the agent to do that. Creates a tar archive. I then basically untar the file. And then I deploy that to render. I tried Netlify as well. I can try Vercel as well. But it's just it's a very simple, it's just if I do make, I think this will work. Here we go, ls site static. There we go. Some HTML files. How much more simpler do you want? And so if we site static, so there's my source content for this actual website. You can see we've got symlinks here, so I can sort of reuse the exact same docs that are in GitHub, so that's pretty awesome. And then it spits out some beautiful HTML, like how much more simpler do you need? And you can see there's also Markdown files alongside it. So one thing I want to do is if you go to, say, the docs, and you've got this module contract, this guide, the thing is to make this easy for agents to consume. We just added MD, and there's the raw Markdown. So every page on my website has a Markdown. You can just get the Markdown for it. Perhaps I should add a link to the thing here itself. And so, yeah, bang, out the other end comes a directory full of pre-baked HTML, and you just throw it on whatever host that you need. And so the beauty of this, every person loves their, the smell of their own body odor. Every person loves the smell of the static site generator, but I'm really hoping that this one can last me, a decade or more. I think there's enough flexibility here where I'm running dynamic code at build time. I want to add server-side stuff as well for real dynamism where, depending on the route that you pass in, it could maybe talk to a database. I've just got this website off the ground, so there's a lot more to come here. But yeah, I just want, I don't want to do dependency updates. I really, the part of the philosophy of this Quip tool is that it's really small, and hopefully, it's in sort of, I'm building at the moment. I'm going to be adding features, want to add the right features, but I kind of want it to, the Quip that is today, if I get it right, the Quip from this year, kind of hoping that the Quip in 5-10 years is kind of the same thing. I'm hoping it's mostly frozen. Its feature set is, this is what I'm trying to really think about, which avenues to take it down. Everything, all these WASM modules are essentially plugins for Quip. And so that's where, want the focus is that you can extend it to however you like. And so one thing I'm really hopeful for, obviously I control this project, so I'm going to be happy, but one thing I'm really hopeful for is that I can have these websites and I don't have to, I love Astro, but, they've gone through, 5, it's version 5. That happened very rapidly. I think it was pretty seamless, but, I'm tired of these tools. They're amazing, they're awesome, but you have these major version jumps, and I'm just tired of that. I want something that's boring, solid, sort of simple enough to, elegant enough to do what I need it to do, but flexible enough I can, wrangle it to my needs. This opinion about no trailing slashes, seem to have a really strong opinion there. You can just create, fork this thing. I think it's just implemented in Zig. You can just fork this thing and add the trailing slash version if you want. I don't need to build that into Quip. So that comes back to this philosophy. Good tools, I believe that, the ones that I'm, obviously this is, sort of conforming to what Quip already is, but, I like things that are easy to compose. That's why I love React. Secure by default. That's one thing I've noticed with React server components, is that the security story seems like quite complicated. You've had a lot of exploits there. I want something that's just like dead simple. And so dead simple often means that it's easy to make secure by default. I want these things to be cheap to replace, so I'm not too not too tied to these wasm modules. I just sort of just pumping them out using my AI agent. But if I decide that there's a better version of this, if there's a community of modules being shared, we can swap these things in. So AI agents really make a lot of software. You can just build it in less than an hour. I want to create a tool that's going to follow that philosophy. I want things that are rapid to test and iterate. So you saw that quip comply command, which I will go into in a future video, more of how that works. But that speed, that iteration speed, is really key. I'm sick of CI pipelines that take minutes. I want this thing to run in under a second. And so there's been a lot of I've looked at a lot of game development, and I'm not going to claim that this website is as fast as a game, because those guys are amazing. But I really want that philosophy of this stuff should be just really fast, and that speed is good for users, but it's also good for developers because you can iterate. And another thing, this is created this DSL for WebAssembly called Orb. And one of the things I was really looking forward to exploring more there, and that I want to have here as well, is I want these modules that just work everywhere. They work on the web, they work on native, they work on mobile, they work as a desktop app, they work on the server. I really want, they work as a CLI, of course. I just want to write this thing once. I've got this little heading down here. I want to vibe once, run everywhere. I've invested this effort into making this CommonMark implementation. I've got a good implementation now, I think, I've got a good implementation of this ICO converter. I just want to be able to reuse that everywhere. I don't want to have to re-implement it in Swift. I don't have to re-implement it in JavaScript. I don't have to re-implement it in Java or whatever else. I just want to have this one version of this thing, and I want to be able to reuse it as much as I like. And the last thing was that it's runnable by both agents and users, which is something I touched on before, but I'm sort of really leaning into AI coding. But I don't, you can use Quip without using any AI coding. You can write these things by hand. You can write your C exactly how you like it. You can use, you can use your memory allocator of choice. You can do whatever you want. So it's friendly for people that choose to use AI or who don't want to use it. I've got no problem with that. And so that's the website. So you can visit it at quip.dev. It's all it's statically rendered. I want to add more dynamic rendering in the future. Here's one test that I encourage you to do. Here's one I always check. Let's see if it's good. Usually you want to keep these things warm, but let's see how it goes. It's through render. I'm in Australia. Usually that means that websites are kind of slow, but you can see it's really fast. Render seems to have Cloudflare in front of it. You can see that the status was expired. If I run this again, it's going to be a cache hit, and it's going to be really, really fast. But it seems to me that the actual server, and you can see here, it does nothing. It seems to be really fast. And of course, that's one of the things that static sites give you. So check out the repo. And it's got 14 stars now, so you could be the 15th. And here's a website. Completely made it from scratch in WebAssembly. I used Go to make this Quip tool. Use Go because it's got awesome stuff for file system, HTTP server, and common formats. It's just got built in the standard libraries, batteries included, which I just love. Using Y0, which is amazing, and I made this website completely from scratch. Created a Markdown, a converter. I created all this stuff from scratch. And so there's a couple of things I just want to end on. And so the philosophy I have is like everything's open. I don't want I'd love to make some money, work out how to make a living from this stuff. But my philosophy really is like if there's a good idea, anyone's going to be able to clone it for free. Okay, I want to have my version of that idea then be the free and open version. Like there's no point in creating a moat around the stuff, especially in the age of AI. So you saw the Markdown files for all the pages, so you can just sort of go in and just see that. So this is all like humans, crawlers, AI can come and crawl the crap out of this. I've got the implementations of everything as well. So I've got the recipes that transform routes in my website. I've got all these modules that I've implemented, mostly using AI. You can see some cool image effects. I really want to go into that in the future. But yeah, you can see like all these interesting modules there. Like the source is open. Like I can look at, here's a pretty boring example, but it just trims the white space. Like you can see that code. It's on a GitHub. It's not tied to any like corporation. You can just come here. You can point your agent at it if you like. Say copy this thing. And so that's I really want view source was a beautiful feature of the web. I think it's somewhere in some little thing here now. You can view source. This is the word where we were copying and pasting HTML to make websites. I think we should be copying and pasting wasm modules. We should be copying and pasting Markdown. We should be copying and pasting all these things. So this is a flag. You have to go -- view source. You can choose not to have this if you want, but if you choose to, you can have this page here that anyone can look at. How was this website built? It's from scratch. Okay, scratch. What were the parts that helped make that happen? So that if you're interested in that CommonMark parser, you can just look at it there. The other thing is that we need dev servers now. We want pretty nice DX, and so Quip has a dev server as well. So you just go Quip dev, give it your content, and you can see I turned on the view source flag there. It's on port 4000. Come here, and you get the same experience. And it live. I don't currently, might add it in the future. You have to hard reload when you just want to see what's changed. So yeah, don't have hot reloading. I might add that. It just requires usually a bit of JavaScript to sort of pipe back and forth with possibly some sort of WebSocket or some sort of trick there. So I can add that in the future if that's desirable. But essentially, like you just create a new module, change my Markdown parser, reload. It's there. It's loaded in. So we've got a dev server. If we look at the help for Quip. We've got run, we've got benchmarking. I can go into that in the future. Really want modules that are fast. So want to have like a, what's it called? A hyperfine sort of basic version of that built in. We've got image filters that go into that in the future. We've got a dev server, we've got a router. Got a bit of an idea for forms there. We need websites. Obviously static websites great, but we need a bit more than that. So so I've got some explorations there for how that will work. Yeah, go to the GitHub, github.com/royalicing/quip. Just go install it. You can just be running. You can clone this whole repo, spin up the whole site. It's just in the same repo. Yeah, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the philosophy of open formats. Let me know what you think about WebAssembly. Have you tried it? What do you think's promising about it? And what do you think of an idea like Quip? Small tool, really flexible. It's got some opinions built in, but it's like, this is what I really have been chasing for several years now. React components for anything, not just what React does, that run everywhere. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.